I'm afraid to do it too hard. So it being 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021, I hereby call this meeting of the Westborough Select Board to order. Westborough TV has been scrolling our agenda online for those watching remotely, and there are agendas available here in the room for those attending our meeting in person. We'll start off this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, and then now's when we normally have open forum. We have Mr. Story here for open forum?
Yes, for two things, but I'm here for open forum also.
Okay, if you'd like to step up to the podium and introduce yourself, name and address, please.
Good evening, Earl Story, 258 East Main Street. You know, now that I've been observing this, and I brought this to the board before, but crosswalk safety. You know, I've watched it as the traffic has progressed and got more and more and more, and pedestrians need to be as wise to it as the people driving a car. I mean, last night I went to a meeting across the street, put the lights on, and 3 cars went through both ways, you know. So, but I've also seen people just hit the button and charge out right in the street, and, you know, you don't even have a time to react in a car. So I'm just saying the pedestrians got a lot to do here. Some people, you know, people in the car versus, you know, might not be paying attention or whatever, but you got to be paying attention to that car. Just because you put those crosswalk lights on doesn't mean it's safe to walk, you know. So that's all. I just wanted to bring that to town's attention and let people know that. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so he was unable to be here this evening, but our town moderator, John Arnold, did ask me during open forum to remind the public that he is currently seeking letters of interest from residents who might want to serve on the Town Seal Review Committee. Details about the committee are on the town website. Questions as well as letters of interest may be sent to Mr. Arnold at moderator@town.westborough.ma.us. Okay, and there's no one else for open forum. That concludes open forum. Next on the agenda is our town manager report. I turn the floor over to Christopher.
Thanks. Sorry. For my report, just so the public is aware, we did come to you about a year ago to talk about regional dispatch, and the board at the time had supported our exploration of regional dispatch with the towns of Hopkinton and Shrewsbury. The preliminary report came out and shows that Westborough is the only one of the 3 towns that's interested in fully moving forward with that. But we have been made aware of other communities in the area that might want to partner with us. So we did reach out. Chief Purcell reached out specifically to the state, the Secretary of Public Safety, State 911, and we had a meeting with them. Deputy Fershke was there also, and Kim Foster, and we talked about the importance of a potential kickoff session if we were to do this again, so that we could really get some questions answered and talk about the benefits and really sort of set the stage for the regional discussion. So the state is going to be holding, the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security and the State 911 Department are going to be holding a meeting that they've invited stakeholders to, so you all have been invited, as well as public safety folks and finance folks across the street next week, so that we can learn more about regional dispatch and hopefully get some interest from neighboring communities. We continue to work on the transaction and the transfer of that sliver parcel that was owned by the state. There was legislation that went through for DCAM to be able to give us that parcel, and so we continue to work on that. For the town's due diligence on the parcel, we've requested documents from town departments that might speak to what has been there. We've also requested similar documentation from DCAM just to see what if they have any records related to that site. It's a very small parcel. It's also directly abuts the DPW property, and we already have improvements on the parcel. So in talking with the chair, we determined at this time that there really was no need for a full 21E. But if the board has concerns, please reach out to me. The public health director, that position remains vacant. The Board of Health did meet and made an appointment subject to negotiation, and that candidate did withdraw. So we did have a second finalist who the Board of Health will be considering for appointment this evening at their meeting. And then I did reach out to the delegation to file the 2 home rule petitions that were passed at town meetings, the charter amendments, one changing Board of Selectmen to Select Board in the charter, and then also putting the Facilities Department in the Department of Public Works. For department head updates, the Public Works Department wanted to let you know that the water and sewer rates will increase in FY22. The last rate adjustment was in FY18. The estimated increase for the average customer would be about $8 per quarter. They also wanted to make people aware about the disposing of dog waste bags in neighborhood catch basins has become a frequent occurrence. So local Girl Scout troops have been volunteering to stencil no dumping at several of the basins. For the finance department, on June 16th, the town received a payment of $1 million, which was the first of our coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds through the American Recovery Plan, or the ARPA, which we've been referring to it as. Guidance on the use of those funds, preliminary guidance has come out, and so we're continuing to look at that as it comes out from the Department of Treasury. The first quarter of fiscal year 2022 real estate and personal property tax bills will be mailed by the end of June, and those are due August 2nd. The Recreation Department will be hosting free summer concerts again, which is exciting. The concerts are scheduled for July 13th, 27th, and August 10th at the Bay State Common. And then also over the spring, they partnered with Girls on the Run, which is an organization that inspires girls to build confidence. At the end of their season, they put on a lemonade fundraiser and decided to donate back to the Recreation Department's scholarship fund. With the senior centers continue to work on operating and getting all of their classes and programs back on the calendar. Their handyman's been busy installing air conditioners and also lock boxes. So if anyone needs that service, they can contact the Council on Aging. They also wanted to note that the volunteer coordinator is retiring at the end of July. So they may have to continue through the summer and into the fall, the volunteer coordinator is planning to retire at the end of July, but may stay on a little bit longer, I guess, to help with projects. The town clerk has a list of updates, which you can read in the posted town manager report. Our town clerk attended the Mass Town Clerks Association 3-day conference, which focused a lot on the 2022 election procedure changes. Youth and Family Services submitted a mid-year report to the Metro West Health Foundation. They had received a grant through them. In May, they delivered the first of 3 virtual trainings, which was something that they funded through the grant. Westborough community members most at risk of negative mental health impacts of COVID-19, which was the subject of the presentation, so through the grant. Also, Bethita Schumann, the senior counselor, is retiring at the end of June after almost 19 years, and there's a farewell reception at the library tomorrow from 4 to 6 if you want to say goodbye to Bethita. And then Kara Presley, our Youth and Family Services Director, will be a featured speaker joining Westborough Behavioral Health Hospital as part of the Corridor 495 Success Express workshops on June 24th at noon. And they will be returning to in-person direct services. They've been doing telehealth because of COVID, but they'll return to in-person direct services beginning July 1st. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the site plan review for the special permit. So we've got people participating remotely. Okay, great. So I want to welcome Tracy Reed to our meeting. She's participating remotely, and so the board can see her on the screen in front of us or behind.
Hello, all right, it's a presentation. I can't see if the presentation is up yet.
It is not yet up.
Yep, I'm putting it.
Oh.
The dog in the background.
Oh, brilliant. There it is. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you all for the opportunity to participate remotely. All right, so my name is Tracy Reed, and I'm here tonight representing Rare Breed Veterinary Partners. We are presenting a project for 1 Oak Street. It's a special permit application. All veterinary or kennels that have 4 or more patients or animals are required to file a special permit application with the town. So I'm presenting about Medic, which is an urgent care veterinary clinic. Next slide, please. So what is urgent care veterinary medicine? It's the exact same as urgent care for humans. As a pet parent, I think you just saw my dog move around. My dog and cat have an uncanny knack for injuring themselves or otherwise getting into trouble after hours. You can come home from work and realize that someone ate something inappropriate or has injured themselves. So pet medics provide some break for family practitioners when they're closed, kind of bridging the gap between sort of general practice and sort of your emergency trauma. I think the closest to you guys is Tufts. And oftentimes you don't need something that's quite that, you don't need emergency service or actual trauma services. So that's the real beauty of Pet Medic. It's basically same day, evening, and weekend appointments. Again, just bridging the gap between the general practitioners and the trauma centers. Our chief medical officer, Nir, was an emergency clinician who realized through his experience working in those centers that almost all of the patients they saw didn't actually need emergency services or hospitalization. So that kind of created Pet Medic. Next slide, please. All right, so you are all familiar with the site. The site is at 1 Oak Street. It's the plaza right on Turnpike Road, Route 9 in the Highway Business District. The plaza includes Chipotle and FedEx. FedEx is at the far right. The Pet Medic will be on the far left of that sort of front face there, opposite of the FedEx. And on the slide you can see I've kind of highlighted that location and also shown a picture. Our chief medical officer, Nir, has a medic open in Watertown. So that is a picture of his reception there. Next slide. We're proposing, no, this is a slide of the site plan. We're proposing no changes to the site plan or circulation. The existing parking includes 167 spaces with 14 allocated to the vacant space that we're going to be occupying. The count exceeds the zoning requirements for the cumulative site. And again, our suite, looking at the site plan, is in the top left of the building, occupying about 2,800 square feet. Next slide, please. So this is a plan of the interior of the clinic. I think I forgot to say, I'm actually the architect. So inside we'll have 4 exam rooms, there's treatment, surgery, pharmacy, diagnostic laboratory, sterilization, x-ray. There'll be 1 doctor on staff per shift. There are 4 exam rooms because we really like to have patients checked into rooms when they arrive. You can imagine pets who are injured or sick are feeling really vulnerable, and the easiest way to help get them comfortable in a new environment is to just put them in a private room with their family. So the site will have no overnight patients or boarding. Again, the idea is cuts and scrapes, things like that. Check in, check out. So, yeah, Rare Breed is honestly one of my favorite clients. Their company is centered around the values of love, respect, fun, and kindness. Veterinary medicine, the company was founded because veterinary medicine is historically an incredibly stressful occupation with high turnover and burnout. And the wonderful thing about Medic is that it's easing the burden of being on call for patients after hours. And, it allows those primary practitioners to spend time with their families and recharge to give them a better quality of life. And it also allows practitioners with young children, like our CMO, with the ability to spend time with their kids during the day and then work a sort of second shift. So it's easing the burden on general practitioners, is providing sort of regular shifts for emergency staff, and then also helping us pet parents do a better job of caring for our loved ones. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. So we're really excited to bring Pet Medic to Westborough and look forward to serving your community. And thanks for the opportunity to tell you about our plans. That is the end of my formal presentation.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I will open it up to the board if any members have any questions. Ian.
Yeah, I just had one question. I think you said 14 dedicated spots. Are those
Correct.
On the side of the building, or where exactly are the dedicated spots?
Well, sorry, I should say dedicated in the allocation. I think there aren't specific spots. I think it is first come, first serve. There is parking on the side and there is some on the front. I'm assuming that our customers are going to be parking in front of the building. The hours of the clinic are 4 to 11, so it will be off hours for some of the other businesses there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sean or Shelby? No comments?
Yeah, so I was wondering if, actually, a following question to Selectman Johnson regarding parking. Is there an opportunity, or has Pet Medic explored having dedicated spots for at least drop-off? Just knowing that a pet could be injured and, bringing them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's extensive parking in the back of the lot, but I'm just wondering if that's been contemplated.
I don't think that has specifically been contemplated. I do know that we do have a sort of stretcher in the clinic if anyone is having difficulty getting into the building. There should be patients that are able to, I guess you could say, to move from cars into the clinic on their own. And typically that their owners would be on site with them the entire time. So there shouldn't be a sort of traditional drop-off. They would either be waiting in the waiting room,
Sure.
or I can imagine them going to the Chipotle to grab something to eat. They won't be leaving for like extended periods of time.
Sure. And you said the hours of operation are 4 p.m. to 11 p.m.?
Correct.
Okay. Jim, maybe you can help me out since you're here as our town planner. Is that a handicap ADA spot just in front of Chipotle? Is that one or two there?
Yes,
Is that what
there are some.
Is that what it is? I think I see blue.
Yes.
But,
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see it in the slide a little bit on the front.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Knowing that you'll probably have some older customers, that will be helpful that that's right near the entrance.
Absolutely.
Selectman Marshall, thank you. Hi, Tracy. We haven't seen each other yet, but we'll be seeing each other in 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
good to see you. I think your suggestion for a drop-off space or two in front of the clinic is an excellent idea. Tracy, in the interim, before you get in front of the planning board, could you approach the owner of the building and ask them if they'd be willing to dedicate 2 spots in front of your door? I think that's a wise idea. The reason that I'm thinking that is we all know that plaza. It's a very busy area on a very busy corner. People come in and out quickly because they're going to Chipotle, get lunch. In the morning, I don't see it being an issue for you, but as you get around noon to 2 o'clock, and again in the evening as you're winding down, someone coming in with an injured animal might have a problem navigating on foot with their pet in that area. So if you ahead of time, before you get to the planning board, I think it would be a good idea to reach out to your landlord and ask them if they'd be willing to sign 2 spots in front. I think that would be good for your business, and I think it'd be good for your landlord as well. That's a liability issue for your landlord.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, I will bring that to the team.
Oh, and one other thing, so I don't have to come back up again. One thing that Tracy didn't say is there is no outdoor access for the animals, so you don't need to worry. This does not function as outdoor recreation during the day for the animals. It's not like a kennel at all. It's all totally professional, just like any other doctor's office you might go to yourself. It's time-bound and there's no outdoor space. Thank you.
Okay. All set?
Can I so one other suggestion is actually speaking of dog waste, which is just disgusting that people are dropping that into drains. I can't even imagine. But I don't know if this is required as part of the special permit process, but that there would be receptacles that are clearly marked for waste, because even though there's no recreation area, inevitably animals, particularly those that might be sick, could have need for them. So I think if they are available, that would be helpful, because I would imagine if I were Chipotle, I wouldn't want my trash cans being used for that purpose, although they probably will be. But if yours are clearly marked with your logo on it, people will know that that's the place to put their waste.
A good suggestion.
And that actually leads into question. The information said there's no outside space for the animals. I guess my question is, I think it would be beneficial if there was space outside for pet relief. I worry that, someone arrives. I know you like to get them into an exam room, but, when the dog needs to go, the dog needs to go. If they're going to go outside, we wouldn't want them strolling on to neighboring businesses where there are lawns and things of that nature. So if there could be a small area that, pet owners could take their pets to relieve themselves and then have the bags for cleanup there. I know it's urgent care. It's different than a standard vet practice, but I've never seen a veterinary clinic without some outdoor space for that purpose. And then my last question was, knowing that the tenant next door is a dental practice, has there been any consideration with respect to soundproofing between the walls? Just knowing that, and I know my pup would be very vocal while in the exam room, and just want to make sure that it's not, wouldn't reasonable steps taken to make sure there's no disruption to the dental practice next door.
Yes, I think part of that might be taken care of. I'm not sure what the dental practice's hours are, but part of that, I'm not sure how much overlap there is with that, but definitely sound control is something that we're very sensitive to. Obviously, if a dog is upset in an exam room, it might upset other patients in the clinic as well. So that is something that we're very aware of.
Okay.
So we'll submit those questions, or we'll submit that.
Yep. So
Yeah.
so we'll submit those questions and suggestions to the planning board.
It's exciting.
Great.
It is.
Yeah.
That's great.
Welcome
Yeah.
to Westborough.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Almost welcome, I guess.
Almost welcome.
Great.
Fingers crossed. Okay, great. Anything else? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Okay.
That virtual participation went very well.
It did.
Yeah, first
It
time.
did. So
Yeah.
thank you to Westborough TV
Yes.
for the new technology setup
Yes.
that allows the virtual meeting participation to happen. Next on the agenda is a discussion vote on a lease amendment for the Westborough Golf Club. I will turn the floor over to Christy.
So as the board is aware, we've transferred management of the golf course over the last year from the contracted service that we previously had to an employee position under the recreation department. One of the things that we did previously was there was a liquor license that was given to the golf club manager, which again was a contractor. Now that it's a town employee, the town cannot issue itself a liquor license. And so, in order to be able to continue to offer that as an amenity at the golf course, we have reached out to Tom Oliveri of Civic Kitchen to ask about his interest in serving alcohol in the golf course, the pro shop, and how that would work. And so we have, working with town council, we've drafted a lease amendment that would give him access to those areas, which obviously is required in order to give the alteration of premises license that would be required also through the ABCC. So the amendment has been discussed with the Recreation Commission. We've worked closely with the Recreation Director. And so the amendment is before you tonight. This is really the first step. So that second step would be the application of the alteration of premises. Tom has already provided his application materials to our office. So this is the last piece that we need. And then the board would hear the alteration of premises license at an upcoming meeting. At that time, if there were any restrictions on the license in terms of hours and things like that, those could be added to the license at that time. So I know Tom is here, Earl Story as the Recreation Commission Chair is here, and then Jen Kirkland's also here, and Ian also worked with us as your liaison to that commission.
Okay, would you like? Yes, you may. Please do.
Hi. Excuse me, Tom Oliveri from Civic Kitchen.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So
I'm here for questions, I think.
that's fine. I don't, Ian, you've been involved in this. You want to say anything else, and then we can open up to any questions?
No, I might defer to Earl, and I talked beforehand. Earl, I don't know if you have anything to lead off, anything more than Christy said, but.
No, I don't. We unanimously voted on this, and Tom, we met with Tom, and he was very gracious to work with us, very willing to work with us. So, I mean, gives us a good opportunity to be able to do this, and we can walk through the meeting room and come up the back stairs and be right at the bar, so there's nobody tracking, walking through his establishment with cleats and things like that, which is important. And I think it's a win-win situation for both of us, So. We're happy with the decision.
Yeah, I think that's right, and thank you, Tom, for helping out here. It is something an amenity that we've had for, I think, 2 years at the golf course. Members and guests have really appreciated having that opportunity to grab a beer or two while they're golfing. So it is something that we've heard even this year, since we haven't had it, of people wishing that we did. So this is a step in that direction. The one thing that, as we went through it, that was added and agreed, I think, of both parties, was that it would be a period through the end of this year. So basically, both sides could look at it and say, is it working for each of us, to see whether we continue it. But so it's kind of on a trial basis. We expect that it will work well, but we wanted to give that opportunity to kind of reevaluate it once this year completes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So if there are no other comments, I'll entertain the motion.
Tom, anything I missed there with that, or I don't want to speak for you either on that. So.
You hit the nail on the head. It's
Okay.
it's going to be trial and error, and we're going to work together to make the situation beneficial for both of us.
Perfect.
I just have a comment. I want to thank everyone involved for being creative with this solution. I feel like this is sort of a bridge here for the golf course, and the club, and obviously members and guests who we welcome. So appreciate you, Tom, working with the town to do that, and hopefully it helps your business and helps the golf club and all good stuff. So appreciate that.
Okay.
So I'll move to approve the amendment to the lease agreement between the town of Westborough and Civic Kitchen and Drink.
I'll second.
So moved and seconded. Any further comments?
Can you just, sorry, the document has my signature on it, so can you just authorize me to sign it as part of your motion?
I will add that to my motion to authorize the town manager to sign the addendum to lease of premises.
Oh, no. Second.
Okay. No further questions or comments. We'll move to a vote. All in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up is an aspect of part of our strategic goals for the year, which is a review and update of select board policies. And so first, up for discussion, I'll go by the order in the packet, is the flag policy. And so I will turn the floor over to Member Welch.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, just to remind the community of the current flag policy, today is a single line sentence that states the town of Westborough flies the flag in accordance with the United States Flag Code. There have been a number of requests, even during my short tenure on the board, for supporting flags of other kinds and other locations. So we thought this would be a good opportunity as part of our board goals to go back and start to revisit. And this was a policy that we wanted to tackle first. So I'll just open it up to see if the board has any questions about what we've come with. I'll also mention that I appreciate Christy's work with me on writing the new flag policy for you all to review tonight.
Okay, I'll start from left to right.
Patrick, thank you very much. I think this looks, like a marked improvement over what we had. I think it does take into account people's concerns and gives them an opportunity at the Bay State Common to represent the flags that they see fit for their gatherings or whatever, and yet does, makes it clear that only the U.S. flag flies at Town Hall, and we follow the directions there. So I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Shelby?
Okay. Yeah, a couple of comments. So obviously, thank you, Patrick. Always helpful to work from a draft, so thanks for all of your work here. The 1A, where it speaks to, so it says, nothing in this policy shall be deemed to establish a policy with respect to installation of new flagpoles. I just didn't understand why that's there.
Yeah, it's really about not saying that the town can't install other flagpoles in other locations of the town.
Okay.
And certainly if we do install new flagpoles in other locations and we need to amend the policy for specific purposes of what those locations are meant for, then I think we would have to revisit the policy.
So that's what I thought. So to that end, should there be something in here that, and maybe 3C addresses this, that if a new one were to be put up and we're caught in the middle of amending this policy, so let's say we decide to put one up at, I don't know, it doesn't matter. That does 3C cover us that all other flagpoles not mentioned that the town owns?
Yeah, I think so 3A is specific that the only flagpole that another flag can be flown on is the one at Bay State Common.
Okay. Okay.
So if we were to put another one up.
Okay, so that's fine. And then on 3A, I'm wondering, we talk about display of other country flags. What if the gathering down at Bay State is, I don't know, it's the Civic Club is having an event and they want to fly their flag?
I think that would be permitted under the policy under 3B. You can fly other flags in those locations. We can certainly,
I mean, it says nations in 3B.
Right, right.
So it doesn't say, or the organization, so I think we should, because it will come up if we don't want to include it as other organizations,
right.
Or what if it's Pride Month and someone wants to hang a rainbow flag up, right? That's not a nation flag.
Sure.
So that would be one comment that I would have. The other is, I didn't have a chance to go down to Bay State. I apologize. Is there only one flagpole there?
I believe so,
There
yes.
is. Okay, because then 3B is, it's kind of irrelevant, but it's good that it's there.
Yeah,
For multiple polls.
it creates an interesting dynamic. If there were necessary for more than one flag, the way the U.S. flag code policy is written is that if any one nation's flag flies and a second flag of another nation flies, they have to be flown on two separate staffs at equal height and of approximately equal size. So it would definitely be something that we would need. We would likely have to reject a request for another flag to be flown, a second flag to be flown because of that.
Okay. So under, let's see here, under 3E, so it speaks to the timing of the when the flags can be hoisted and when they have to come down. My question is, who is responsible for the raising and lowering of these flags?
The individual party that is having the event.
Okay, so I think that should be stated in the policy, that, or maybe it's part of the application. Maybe it doesn't have to be in the policy, but maybe it's clearly stated with permission that comes from the town. And then, sorry, under 4, it seemed, it was on the red line. It's not unclear to me about notice. So the application goes to the town manager, but there was something about who gives permission. Is it just solely through our town manager, or does it come to the board for consent?
It's through my office.
Okay. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Well, we had a discussion about it, and use of the Bay State Common comes through my office. This has to go, these flags are only flown in conjunction with an event that happens at Bay State Common, and they can only be flown
for that period.
They can only be flown per this policy, which is established by the board. So if there were any sort of request that came that was in conflict with the policy, it would have to come to the policy making board, which is the select board.
Okay. I'm good with that because it's event specific. Okay.
And a matter of fact, I'll just point out the last item, which is 4A, number 6. The application for Bay State Common needs to be included, I believe, with that.
Yep. Great. Okay. Yeah. So my only concern, really, I think, is just the. Well, you heard them. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So I have a question about the way it's worded, understanding the intent. With respect to other flags. So I understand that in 2B we're saying the permanent flagpole in the Rotary is only ever the flag of the United States of America and never a second flag. So no POW, MIA flag beneath it or things of that nature.
No, actually, so the U.S. flag policy allows for another flag, such as the POW, MIA flag, to be flown below the flag.
Except this says, shall remain dedicated solely to the display of the United States of America flag, and nothing herein shall require the board to replace with any other flag. So it does say solely in the display. So that would indicate only the United States flag on that flagpole.
So are you requesting a change?
I'm just wanting to clarify that I'm understanding that that's the intent.
Yeah.
That only the U.S. flag would ever fly on that flagpole.
That is the way it is written right now.
Okay. So when we get into Section 3 other flags, we're allowing the display of other countries' flags at Bay State Common, so long as it's done within the U.S. flag code. And then we say no other flags will be permitted on town-owned land and public buildings. As I read this, it means on any town property we cannot fly the flag of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's another flag that you, if you are having if you were having an event and were using the Bowman Recreation Area and wanted to hang flags off the pavilion, you would be unable to do so.
Good point.
It means the POW MIA flag that hangs and the 9/11 memorial flag that's on the fire department headquarter property with the 9/11 memorial would not be able to be flown.
So I think to your second point, I don't think the intent, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, the intent wasn't.
I know it's not the
intent. But the intent, wasn't to eliminate the ability to fly some of the flags you mentioned. But I do think when you're speaking about hanging flags on public buildings and the Bowman Conservation. I mean, the intent really is that there would not be the ability to hang flags all over town. So the only place, while the flag of the Commonwealth and POW flag is appropriate, the intent, at least through our conversation, was that there would be no hanging of other flags anywhere else. And actually, we did talk about it only being the flag of another country and not flags that might be associated with anything, a movement, a club, anything, just so that we were, because the only request, frankly, that we've received, and you've all seen it, is this request of hanging a flag of another country. And so that's really what this policy allows for, the hanging of a flag of another country at Bay State Common in conjunction with an event. So it's very limited in scope.
And I think the word that we're missing there on 3C is no other nation's flags will be permitted. So I think that's where we probably need to add in that word, because it was the intent not to exclude state flags and appropriate flags like the POW flag.
Okay. Yeah, just some clarification there would be.
That's perfectly appropriate.
Maybe even title Section 3, other nations' flags, specifically, because that all relates to that.
Sure.
Okay. Ian.
To ask my question, although I'm still not, I guess I don't understand on 2B. So we're saying now that in the Rotary, it will only solely be the United States flag there.
Well, I think I'm hearing that there's a need to include some language around the POW flag and other, I'll say, sounds like memorial type flags for national observance or something like that. So we can certainly look at putting some more language in there to cover that.
Okay. Thank you for that. The other question is we talked, and just came up, we talked about the flag posts. I know that we swiftly called that one up, but we do have other flag poles, whether it's at the fire department. I think there's one up at Veterans Freedom Park. I believe there's a flagpole there. Mm-hmm. But we don't kind of address those, and I think they're really intended, again, for just U.S. flags. We do address Bay State Commons here, but I don't know if there's anything we need to put in there about other flag locations on municipal-owned property that it should.
Do we
have 3C
a...
speaks to what can't be done at those, but it doesn't speak to what the town can do.
Right. And where 2B specifically talks about the Rotary, it's like almost like where we should maybe hit the other one. So just
you can have an implicit or explicit policy here, right? So it depends on how do you want to call out every single line item on every flagpole, or do you want to just make kind of an overarching statement? Anything that falls out of that statement, has to come before the board through the town manager's vetting. But in order to do, I think what you're saying is that, Christy, I think we would need to kind of get a complete list of all the town flagpoles and locations.
Yeah, and I don't think we want, that's where I don't, not saying that, I just want to make sure that we cover that those are covered, and my understanding by this policy is those would just be for the U.S. flag, and then per the code, whether it's POW/MIA or 9/11, again, Commonwealth, whatever is acceptable. So somehow just a blanket statement that is all other, will follow maybe it's just that we'll follow the flag code.
Okay. I think as Patrick suggested, if 3C were no other nation's flags will be permitted, then that excludes other nation flags, because you've got flagpoles at each of the each of the schools.
Yeah. Right.
The Forbes building,
And maybe 2A actually covers the town of Westborough flag. So actually, as I look at it, that may cover us. If the other flags are only for Bay State Commons, and we're going to fly everything else by the code, which.
Right.
Okay. And then the only other thing I had was more grammatical, and I'm sorry if I sent it sooner, but on 3E, I wonder if it might be clearer or to say it must come down within 1 hour after the event instead of up to 1 hour.
Yeah, that modification we made last moment. So
yes.
Okay.
So can we just go back to Ian, to your comment on the other flag? So I feel like maybe in 2B we could clarify, or have 2C, which speaks to the other town-owned property, like the other town-owned flagpoles on property may also fly such flags as, and put as like, I don't even know an example, but always beneath, per the U.S. flag code, always beneath the United States flag. So it sort of is all encompassing of what
Right,
could
all
happen.
the locations of flags must adhere to the U.S. flag code, something like that, and in that, I believe there is accommodations for other flags, such as the
Right,
PIW,
exactly.
fire flag,
Right.
at 9/11, et cetera.
Well, that's why it's, and 2A may cover that right now. As I read it, just having 2A may cover us because it's
Right.
that.
Well, I thought that there was, and I feel like there's a tradition at the Rotary that it is only United States flag. I mean, because here across at the municipal building, we have multiple flags. We have the POW, MIA, but
I think we flew the PW was down on the Rotary too.
we have, okay,
Yeah.
so
We definitely
I
have.
missed it then. Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay.
Good.
No, thanks for doing this.
Good work.
So, it's the first time I'm bringing a policy in front of the board, so I just want to make sure we're all clear on the process, right? Christie, the way I'm interpreting this, I'll take these feedback, work with you, we'll come back to the board with an appropriate update for you all to look at.
And approve.
Okay,
Yep.
and we can approve
That's
it
great.
at a
Yep.
subsequent, if not next meeting.
Okay.
And just to be
Perfect.
clear, the board wants to, is it the board's desire that this is only specific to other nations' flags? So there are events at Bay State, which is really the only flagpole we're talking about, where there's a variable here for something other than the town, that we wouldn't allow an organization to fly a flag. I mean, that's the way the policy reads right now, so.
Right, so the way the policy reads is that it would be the U.S. flag on every flagpole, and that the U.S. flag would come down on Bay State Common to fly another flag per the flag code.
Right.
And so our discussion was to only take the U.S. flag down if you were to fly another country's flag in conjunction with an event.
And only at Bay State Commons.
Okay.
Does that,
Well, I mean, I think that if we're updating this policy, I feel like we could have, per the U.S. code, you could still fly the U.S. flag, and you could have two other, not grommets, is that what they're called? To hang, I mean, you're going to use the Civic Club again, the Civic Club's flag, because they're having a big event.
so are you asking, so down there's a single flagpole, right?
Yep.
So are you asking if the US flag would remain on the pole and the civic flag would be flown below that
Correct.
flag?
As is allowed by U.S. code.
Yes, it is. So I think that's where Ian was headed, was that's covered under the US code. So we can do that under 2A.
Right, so that would be allowed.
But it still has to follow the process, because it would be an organization bringing it forward. We're not going to just like randomly be like, oh, let's hang a Patriots flag, or, you know what I mean? Like when the
Right.
Patriots come to do a special event here, making it up, and they want to fly their flag.
Right, so it'd still follow
So-
the process for any flag change.
So are
on
you
Bay
asking,
State Common.
I guess, are you asking if the same process is used for a second flag to be added
Yes.
below the American flag as
Yes,
the same process to adding only a single
It should
flag of
be.
another nation?
it should
Okay.
be.
So that would be in section 3, I believe. We would
Yes.
have to amend the process to say, to accommodate flags to be flown below the American flag at Bay State Common. Outside of the normal POW, MIA, and I'd have to go back and look at the US flag
Right.
code to understand exactly what they
I
have.
just think we're going to get the
itemized
request,
out.
and then we're going to be like, oh, we don't have a policy for that,
Yeah.
and then we'll be discussing this again.
Right.
I just think that the board should be aware related to this policy, and then also the policy we're about to talk about, is that if you allow a flag, you allow any flag. And so, certainly just understanding the implications related to freedom of speech and other things.
Correct, but that also goes with the permission to fly a secondary flag under the United States flag would the event would have to be sanctioned by U.S. town manager. You can't just like.
Which is, right, which it would be the same, yes.
Yeah, we're trying
So
to.
if it were an event, if it were an event that were, I would say to the common person, were to be an event that would be considered dangerous or offensive, you as the town manager could say, we're not going to allow you to use Bay State Common, and therefore the flag is irrelevant, right?
Right, if they go through the process of reserving Bay State Common,
Right.
then they that would be the only way that they could fly the flag.
Right, I'm just saying, so we are there, if someone were to come and it were an event that, you know, we just said as a town, we're not gonna let you use this property, then
it's the flag policy.
it's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant, correct.
Right,
Right.
right. I just think it's, you know, I don't know, maybe all the clubs are rushing out to buy flags as soon as we approve this. Maybe not.
Let me ask a question just to kind of make sure we're on the same page here, because as we go back and revisit this again and try to bring back a new version back. So is it to the board's or, you know, you all's perspective that we should have a part of a policy which speaks to the Bay State Common and allowing flags of other nations, flags of other, whether it be an event or a particular pride thing or something like that,
Whatever.
and those flags would only be allowed to be flown at Bay State Commons. All other flags on all other poles in town would adhere to the U.S. flag policy, and that is it.
Yes, but you'd still be adhering to the flag policy at Bay State Commons,
Yes.
even for those other organizations, but you'd still be flying the United States flag. I mean, I just think about even the senior parade, right? Like, what if things ended there and they wanted to fly the Ranger flag,
Yeah.
right? Like, why not
Right.
allow that? I mean, I think that's a great thing. But
Okay.
again, you still have to seek permission for that event, which could include, do you wish to fly your organization's flag? Yes, no.
Sure.
So that would be my request.
So we'll work on, I think, tightening this up more specific to Bay State Commons, and then, making it more clear that all other flagpoles in town would adhere to the U.S. flag policy.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to the Rotary sign policy.
Yeah, so again, let me just bring up the original policy just for the community's understanding. So again, the Rotary policy is a single line item today. It currently states the signs in the Rotary are to be limited to notices for town meeting, election day, and water conservation bans. So the first thing we wanted to do was take a look at what other town, important messaging is needed. So that's that first section around Section A. We expanded that to include Department of Health notices coming out of COVID. Certainly there might be an opportunity in the future where we need those types of messages, and then also emergency type notices. Then we went on to try to clarify around other signage, specifically what could be held on the Rotary, what size of the sign could be held on the Rotary, as well as for allowing for an opportunity for national and state days of celebration and remembrance, and specifically thinking of what the Veterans Board came to us asking for their sign to be displayed. Then we went on to talk about displays and other objects that are not signs. I was thinking of the poppies that were put on the triangle there next to the Rotary, and certainly the menorah that is put up by one of the synagogues in town. So we wanted to make sure we allowed for those to be there as well, and provided some guidance to the town as to when they should be put up and when they should be taken down. Then specifically around exclusions, which are important, we wanted to talk a little bit about, certainly I believe under the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that I've read, that free speech is actually limited in regards to threats of violence targeted at persons or groups. So we wanted to call that out. We also wanted to call out safety concerns around lighted signs and motion devices. We don't want people driving on the road to be distracted by blinking lights or flash, whirligigs and those types of things, and the things you see flying at the car lots, that type of thing, right? So.
I love those guys.
I do too. We actually bought one for a family party, so.
Don't bring it to the Rotary.
That's right.
Good to know.
Could dress up as one that has a Halloween costume. And then certainly commercial advertisements. I actually saw a commercial advertisement sign stuck out there the other day. I think it's been removed, so that's good. We don't want those in the Rotary. And then finally, through the advice of town council, there was an addition around back here.
The waiver of liability.
The waiver of liability. So, that was just a recent modification that we thought was wise. So.
Okay. I'll go from left to right again.
All right. Thank you. Patrick, thank you for taking this one on as well. So I guess to clarify a couple things, so in section A1, 1, that's really the mechanical sign that's on the edge of the rotary, and that's providing notices for all.
Right, and Christy, please step in here. I think my understanding now is they're no longer using the portable signs so much. For example, I think the water conservation man was a standing up trifold type sign. I don't know if that's the norm.
Yeah,
forward.
we only use the electronic signboard for the things listed in A1. So the town meeting, election day. I think the previous policy said emergency notifications, which, we've included the water conservation if it's needed, and then health notices have also been included in that. So this is just more specific, but I don't think it changes what we use it for. Prior to us having the signboard at Lyman and East Main, it was used for other things, but not anymore.
I know, thank you. So when I see for Section 3-1, religious displays are permitted. I think in this, so I guess part of what we're seeing here is by outlining this policy, the thought is that none of these items then need to come before the select board in the future?
Yes, it absolutely. Gives the town some guidance as to what is and is not allowed.
Okay. So I guess then, part of my, I don't want to say concern, that's too strong. So a lot of religious holidays overlap. And so you may have multiple religions celebrating the same day and wanting to put displays in the center of town. Now, I guess my hope would be that they could all do that and respect each other, and it would work out fine. But I guess we're not really limiting the days here, and certainly we don't want to limit any religious display whatsoever by any group. But I guess do folks have concerns about that? That there could be too many at the same time.
Maybe it's one, so like each organization is only allowed one, so let's say you couldn't have 3 menorahs, but you could have 1 menorah, right? You can't have, I don't know, 3 Easter baskets, I don't know. You're allowed 1.
I think in general, I'd like to see the section added to the policy that's the process.
Yeah.
Because right now, there's no process where an organization says, I want to put a sign on and what my dates are.
Right.
And so, for example, it allows, placing of displays and other objects for celebrations and memorial displays with national state holidays. We could legitimately have 25 or 30 organizations all wanting to place something on the Rotary for Memorial Day.
Sure. So this again, Christy and I talked about this quite a bit around kind of the implicit or explicit nature of the policy, right? Do we want to just simply state what is allowed, and then therefore anything that is not allowed would be expected to be brought before the board for approval? Or do we want to list out, all of these different things? So we did have actually a very similar type of language that we had for the flag policy as far as engaging and coming to the board for that. Is that, if you go back to the flag policy, is that type of language what you're looking for an approval process?
Well,
because I think you're right.
I think people want to place, signage or other objects that are not signs on the Rotary should have to file some piece of paper somewhere so we know the requested dates, don't conflict with maintenance that's going to be done by the DPW or planting, or we don't, if we have too many groups that want to place items or signs at the same time that are all allowed within the policy, that it's, at least managed in some way, and to the point that it doesn't become a safety hazard. My reading of the policy, the way it's written now, is if I wanted to, plant, gold stars for Memorial Day, I could simply go plant them without talking to anyone about where they can go or how they should be planted. I can plant them 7 days before.
And as many as you want.
As many as I want.
Yep.
And 2 days after, take them up.
Yes.
And so I do think there needs to be something comparable that goes through, preferably, maybe unfortunately, the town manager's office
Well, I was going to say,
to adjudicate.
to that end also, I think it should be within the oversight of the town manager to say when enough is enough, so there needs to be language. So to your point, if there are overlapping things that it may be first come, first serve, it may just be sort of, we're gonna see how this policy
Maybe-
works its way out, but, or, through the, kind of its use, but, I would be very comfortable with the town manager sort of using her discretion to, say, no, the Rotary is full at this time,
Sure.
because we don't, we want to maintain a particular look to our downtown too.
No, all excellent points, and definitely something that I agree with. I will also, not that we're reviewing it tonight, but if you're familiar with the electric sign board policy, it actually lists the priorities by which items can be placed on that.
Yep.
So maybe that's something we can use as, steal some language from there, or that concept of what it is. But I think, Christy, it sounds like we need to go back and kind of add that in, unless you had any thoughts on that part of it. No? Okay.
Anything else, Shelby?
Oh, I don't
Or Sean?
think Shelby's done.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think I've brought up most of my questions. This is a tough one. There's a lot.
It is. You open the door, and how much you're going to let in on through it.
I almost want to go back to what it was before. And just everything else just needs approval.
That's still an option.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
you know how much I love policies. Number, sorry, let me just try to go in order. 2B, or A2B, excuse me. National, let's see here. Should there be a period, my question was, should we have a period of time that national and state days of celebration are allowed to be placed? I think it's covered in 3.2 down below, I think.
Yep.
Do you guys agree?
Yeah, so maybe that same language has to be in 2B.
Yeah. Although I would ask to reconsider that language because it's 7 days before, 2 days after. A lot of those types of holidays will fall on a Monday. And
Well-
so, you're saying, so it can go from the Monday before to the Wednesday after, whereas sometimes it makes more sense to go from Saturday to Saturday or Saturday to Sunday. I'm not sure how to word it.
Yeah,
to-
that's a
to
tricky one.
provide
It should be like a maximum of,
it could be like
maximum
up to, 10 contiguous days around the holiday, right? And people would say, a good example is going back to, veterans,
Yep.
the request for Memorial Day. Right? Well, they were relying on National Honor Society students to put the flags up. They're not available, weekdays
Sure.
during the day.
or it's
so-
weather or whatever.
Or it's weather.
Yep.
So to be able to say, we want this part of whatever form that gets filled out, to say what day it'll go in and what day it'll come out.
Yeah, I think we would need to come up with some language that would say, certainly, I like the idea of the 10 contiguous days. I think that, though, that we need to put some language around when it's taken down, right? It can't be 10 contiguous days starting the day before or the day of and then go 9 more days after it, right? I would suggest we don't do that.
Okay.
You're thinking of Veterans Day or Memorial Day, is that information even relevant 10 days or
Yeah.
9 days afterwards?
Yeah, I would think you wouldn't sort of lead up to the event
Right,
and have a shorter,
correct.
so I think.
That was the
that's-
attempt. Let's
Yep.
get a week out there in front, but I think your contiguous day comment is appropriate.
So in support of what Alan was saying about a process, when I read 3.1 and 2, so I think it should be very clear that advertisements or sponsorship cannot be on any of the displays. That's been an issue in the past with the menorah. It has a phone number and the name of the synagogue. And that's been an issue with, I know it's been brought to my attention a number of times.
Now, are you concerned about commercial advertisement or advertisement in general? Because what you just described is different than commercial advertisement.
Yes.
I'm concerned about
I
advertisement.
just don't think we need a phone number on, I don't know, maybe a, go ahead.
I agree with Shelby here. I think in one part of the policy, I know there are edits from town council, with the exclusions, line 5 or 4, saying commercial advertisements are explicitly prohibited. I think it needs to be any advertisement, because again, my reading of the policy right now is that someone could potentially put a nonprofit could put an advertisement for a fundraiser. So, and while I don't want to say we don't support fundraisers,
Sure.
but we also don't want,
Yeah, I'll just mention
10
that,
nonprofits with signs for fundraisers.
Right.
sure, I'll just mention that the original language that I had placed in there was advertisement, not commercial or otherwise. Town council had put that word in,
Okay.
so we can pull that out. I think, I personally don't want to see any advertisement. I don't want to see a phone number on anything out
Or
there.
an
No-
email address.
Or an email address,
Or a
or,
website, or,
Right.
I mean, I think,
yes.
yes, like,
No, I agree. I mean, yeah, but it's just, I'm scratching my head because it's like,
no, I
I'm
mean,
going back to,
this
we're
is,
going way too much, and it's,
right.
How do you keep it, right?
So can I'll just keep going on for the couple more comments.
Sure.
Just to throw it out there, because
And
others may have the same.
If I may, real quick, Shelby, I'll just say, I appreciate this, because how far do we go, right? There's a lot of language. I looked at a lot of examples out there of different policies that were similar to this, across Massachusetts and other towns, and it's a difficult, tightrope you've got to walk here, so.
So I had a question about, do we need to be specific about the height? I know you've got, can't exceed 30 square feet, or informational non-advertisement can't exceed 6. Is there a height, just for line of sight for vehicular, bike, and pedestrian traffic? Because depending upon where the sign is placed, coming around the rotary, as Mr. Story already mentioned, pedestrian traffic, people have been hit there, lots of activity. I'm just wondering if we need to be more specific around a height requirement. So not looking for an answer, but it's a question. And then I'm wondering if the horse trough area should be included as part of the rotary.
I was considering it as part of the rotary.
So if it is, I think it should be specifically stated that it is inclusive of.
and also the
Or just
piece
on East Main.
on East Main, too.
Right,
Right.
So the rotary and-
Where the water restriction sign is today as you're coming into the road.
Yep.
right. So define the rotary as the physical rotary plus the adjacent
Green space.
green space, yeah.
And then, and to the process question, I think that my question would be, so what if it's not taken down within the time frame? I feel like the policy or the process should say, that failure to comply with this may result in future refusal or, removal of the sign, removal of the objects by the town and disposal of it, and future refusal to, or future consequences or something. I don't know, but there needs to be a little bit of a stick in this as well. I'm done.
Ian?
Yeah, I guess I just appreciate all the work, but as I read through it and hear the comments, I'm wondering, are we trying to do too much, or can we simplify it? I guess what I'll say, when I think about the process, right now, because it just states what is allowed, everything else has to come to the select board or town manager, so it's almost, and then some of these would be guidance, but do they, maybe we can put them as a policy, as guidance, but still it should be a line that, says this is, all others will be approved by, whether it's the select board or the town manager. I'm fine with the town manager as well, to make that call, and then, we could put guidance in there, or the guidance doesn't have to be in the policy. That could be discussed. I guess the second piece I'd say is, because, and again, saying it because one says official town notice of the rotary do not require select board approval, but then we don't say anywhere else what does require.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could say, you're assuming everything else does, but then you said these things are allowed. My second suggestion take section 2(1)(a) on the other signage, to me, that also doesn't require select board approval, so I'd almost make that 2, that basically informational non-advertisement must be held and whatever, but right now we don't, when each of us are running for office and we have our campaign signs, we don't have to ask the select board or the town manager for approval, so those are already,
Right.
and we allow people to do that, so that's kind of,
Sure.
here's what doesn't require and what's allowed, and it basically you can't, what's always been is it can't be an advertisement, and it can't be staked in the ground, someone has to be holding the sign, so
Yep.
kind of covering it that way. And then, the other pieces, like I said, I don't know whether we put them in, 'cause the concern is we get so detailed and we know we're going to forget something, and then we're going to be constantly updating policy.
Well, I mean, I think
because we
the
missed
intent,
something.
sorry, if I was going to say, I think the intent would be if we expand on this in this direction, right, with all these recommendations on changes, the expectation is we would have that section on how to make a request through the process for anything that is not spoken directly to in the policy. So I think there is kind of this catch-all requirement that we need to have that says, how do you come to the board if something isn't explicitly called out? But I want to. That's what they're asking for, Chris.
Yeah,
But is
well,
the plan-
so Patrick and I we talked about this a lot, and the point I made, and I'll make it again, is that if you write a policy and you're the policy-making board, that just like our current policy, if something isn't compliant with the policy, it comes back to you, and so it doesn't. I'm not sure it makes sense to put in the policy how to not comply with the policy, understanding that it would have to come back. So, but we did have this discussion, so.
Yeah, and I guess it goes to it, I think the other comments came out, like, the way I read this is, so basically, what's in here is allowed. So we say religious displays, we don't say what that means, and again, I don't know, and right now, all that comes before the board,
No,
That's a good
it
or the
doesn't.
town manager.
It doesn't go to anybody. I mean, we
Right.
just get an email that says we're putting the menorah up and we're lighting the tree on the Rotary. So
We discussed and voted on the menorah this year.
no.
No.
We talked about the. We did bring it. You're right. We did bring it this year, but typically we don't. Typically we just because it's been, I think, a tradition.
Right.
We did talk about it this year because of the sign.
Yeah.
So I think if there are things that you want to come before you, then you could be specific about that. But I think saying anything that doesn't comply with this policy, you can come to the board and ask us for it, is just
An
a slippery
invitation.
slope.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the more I think about this, the more I'm inclined to clarify the existing policy, but not be as detailed as
Right.
we are being here. And just a slight difference, I feel like if that we may want to be explicit to what is allowed if there are specific things. Like I think about the flags on the Rotary that continue to come to us year after year after year. Maybe we want to be explicit, but I feel like they should come back to the select board. I feel like it's unfair actually to put our town manager as the sole decision maker of those requests. So I feel like other requests would have to come from the board if the policy was for whatever it wasn't specific for.
So, go ahead, Patrick.
No, I just saw Sean.
Yeah, and I don't know if this could be part of the policy. I think because, Chris is right, we've had sort of traditions that have been allowed, and is there some way we put in here that instead of people coming every year, if they come before us and tell us specifically what they're doing and the dates they want to do it on an annual basis, that we could sort of give longer-term approvals than everybody just kind of coming before us every year.
So I guess what I want to hear from the board is some so simplify down makes sense as much as possible. This went through a number of revisions that were quite large. I'll just point that out. But we definitely want to streamline it down, but I want to understand, are we saying that, I want to give Christy the right level of information so that she can easily say, when a request comes into her, yes, no, just put them into the boxes, that's appropriate, it's not appropriate. And then we want something in here, I'm hearing, I think, that states, if in fact it is something that's appropriate, but may not necessarily be specific to this, are we going to allow that through the process, or are we saying, no, Christy, say no, it's not here,
Right.
therefore it's not allowed?
Well, I think back to the WASA request that came before the board, right? So they had asked for information about the ISO banner, and we said no because we referenced policy. We said no, it's not allowed, and sorry. And we have, again, I call everyone's attention to the lovely poles that we can use for the banners. So I think as a board, we really have to decide, how do we want the Rotary to be used for signs? And my preference is that it be plain and simple, and it just be there, and if people want to temporarily be there to show support for a cause or a thing or political, that's sort of like the ambiance, the feel of the town. But I'm worried about it becoming sort of a circus of signs. And so I think I would rather be explicit about, why not just say this is what is allowed and nothing else? I realize in saying that, my friends who are veterans are already a little miffed at me. And
well,
now
yeah,
they're going to say, well, now she doesn't want flags.
That's the exact
right.
use case I'm thinking of.
Right. So if we as a board feel strongly about that, which I do, then I would be very comfortable in saying, and this is allowed, it still has to go to our town manager so that we can just make sure that there's space, and what if they decide to change their design and they want to put 10,000 flags there? I don't know. You know what I mean? What?
Yeah, and I see that we could keep it simple in that, we're talking about the use case of the flags for Armed Forces Day, Memorial Day, and Veterans Day. That is being done by a town department.
Right, and that's where I was drawing
so,
trying to draw a distinction.
Right,
Yeah.
and so that could almost come,
With number one?
under one, it could be 6, it could be, other, signs or other displays from other town departments with town manager approval. And then that allows the Veterans Advisory Board to plan the flags.
So would that apply to
Signage.
boards and committees? So let's say Sustainable Westborough.
I said town departments.
Okay, I'm just,
specifically. Yeah,
okay.
again, more narrow.
Yep.
As you can see, I chose 2 really easy ones here.
You started out with these ones. Yes.
No, this is.
Okay. Do you have enough to work on?
I think so. I think we got
Okay.
plenty to come back to you all with a revision
Work.
here.
Thank you. It's a lot.
It is, and I think my intent in speaking with Christy was to come back with you with something. I didn't know where you guys would stand on this, how far, what ways, and how much detail we wanted to put. So this is very helpful. Thank you.
And for those out there watching who haven't been through a policy design, part of it is the what ifs, and also thinking about the rule of unintended consequences as
Right.
well. And so it always looks easier than it is. So thank you for taking this on. And
Sure.
I just want to say, Patrick, thank you very much. I noticed, none of the veterans picked this one up. I probably would have been the guy who it fell to if you hadn't raised your hand, so thank you very much.
That was harsh. That was harsh.
Oh, man.
Wow,
on that
okay.
note, we're going to move forward.
Let's see, what other assignments can we give to Sean?
Yes, so noted.
Just asking for it, yeah.
So on that note, we'll move forward to a vote of concurrence on town manager appointments. I turn the floor over to Christy Williams.
So this is our annual or every 3-year appointment of specific positions. So under the charter, the town manager appoints the animal control officer for a period of 1 year, the assistant town accountant for a period of 3 years, and the chief assessor for a period of 3 years with the concurrence of the select board. I apologize. And so I've appointed Melinda McKendrick as the animal control officer, Linda Smith as the assistant town accountant, and Jonathan Steinberg as the chief assessor.
I'll move to concur with the town manager's appointments as presented.
Seconded.
Okay, any questions or discussions? Seeing, hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor? It is approved unanimously, 5 being present. Thank you. Next up is discussion, an update on our Clean Water State Revolving Fund Asset Management Planning Project Authority. And so I will turn the floor over to our DPW director.
Good evening, Chris Pant, Director of Public Works. That title sounded very complicated, but this is super simple.
Well, then simplify it for us.
If you remember,
make a policy about it.
Earlier this year, the town was awarded a grant, an asset management planning grant to look at culverts and stormwater funding. The grant pays for 60% of the total cost, and at the recent town meeting, the remaining balance was appropriated by the town to pay for the entire project. So now we're ready to execute, and we have to sign a contract. Typically, it's pretty straightforward, but in this case, they've required something specific. So for us to establish this contract with the state agency, we're asking you, and the state's asking that you, as the board, authorize specifically the town manager to execute this contract. And so I think in front of you, you probably have the specific words from the state, but that's what we're asking you to do, which is authorize the town manager to sign the contract so we can move forward with this grant.
So if you look at the second page of your packet, attachments to the authority to file is what you would read.
The whole thing, or just the 1, 2, and 3?
The whole thing. It says, be it resolved by the select board as follows. I think you were going to sign Sean something.
I'll move that, whereas the town of Westborough, after thorough investigation, has determined that the work activity consisting of asset management plan is both in the public interest and necessary to protect the public health, and that to undertake this activity, it is necessary to apply for assistance. And whereas the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, the Mass DEP, and the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust, the Trust of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, pursuant to Chapter 21 and Chapter 29C of the General Laws of the Commonwealth, quotes Chapter 21 and quotes Chapter 29C, are authorized to make loans to municipalities for the purpose of funding, planning, and construction activities relative to drinking water projects. And whereas the applicant has examined the provisions of the Act, Chapter 21 and Chapter 29C, and believe it to be in the public interest to file a loan application, now therefore be it resolved by Select Board as follows. 1, that the town manager is hereby authorized on behalf of the applicant to file applications and execute agreements for grant and or loan assistance, as well as furnishing such information, data, and documents pertaining to the applicant for a grant or grants and or loan or loans as may be required, and otherwise to act as the authorized representative of the applicant in connection with this application. And 2, that the purpose of said loan or loans, if awarded, shall be to fund design construction activities. And 3, that if said award is made, the applicant agrees to pay those costs which constitute the required applicant's share of the project cost.
We have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I always forget when we're reading the whole thing. That is the motion. Sorry.
Okay. So any discussion? Questions?
Can I just, so the next page, it's page 44 in our packet, that doesn't need to be read.
The town clerk needs to certify that
Okay,
you voted
okay.
what you
Just want to make
voted.
sure we don't miss that. Okay, thanks. No questions.
Okay, great. Then we'll go with the vote. All in favor? It is unanimous, 5 being present. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay. Next up for consideration is a discussion vote to amend the composition of the Hocomanco Pond Reuse Committee.
Yes.
Select Board Member Marshall.
Trying to get a Kleenex. Excuse me. So, as the board is aware, the Hockomock Pond Reuse Committee has been meeting. Questions were recently raised about the composition of the committee that caused Sheila, Christy, and myself to go back and look through minutes. And as it would be is that the committee was reconstituted in 2018, and that at that time had a 19-member committee. Just for background, it seems that it made sense at the time that it would include members of like the EPA because we didn't actually own the property at that time. So when that committee would have had to work closely with those individuals or those bodies. But practically speaking, it's not a practical committee with 19 people. Achieving a quorum is difficult, and honestly, it's not necessary. And I think, as we all know, you don't necessarily have to be a voting member on a committee to be consulted for, input and expertise. And so Christy and I worked together to provide the list that is in your packet, which I'll be happy to read for the public's benefit of what the proposed membership would be. Okay? It would be an 11-member committee consisting of Open Space, Active Transportation and Safety Committee, Conservation Commission, Planning Board, Advisory Finance Committee, Recreation Commission, Sustainable Westborough, Public Safety, the Select Board, Department of Public Works, and the Town Manager. And we have members of all of those organizations or departments with the exception of Sustainable Westborough.
Does it make total sense? Did you want to make the motion?
Sure. I mean, I can, sure.
Motion, and then if there are questions, we can.
Sure. So I move to amend the composition of the Hockomock Pond Reuse Committee as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any questions or discussion?
I guess I just have one question. Should there be a community member representative? I know that there's obviously some of those committees already have community members on it, but I was just curious, similar to sustainability, right? We have a 9-member with 4 non, board or just.
So I feel like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There'll be at least 8.
Yeah, 6. There are 7 community members, and then the rest would be town departments.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like
Okay.
if we add 1, now we're even.
Yeah.
Where does it stop? Now we're back at 19. We don't need a new motion.
Okay.
I think it's actually 8 and 3
Is it 8?
departments. Because one's Sustainable Westborough.
A question. So will
You're right.
this committee be having public or I guess coming to the public for consideration or?
Right, so the charge of the committee is to develop a recommendation for how the property would be used. And so I would anticipate, not unlike the CPA Exploratory Committee, that committee will, this committee will do its work and bring forward to the board, recommendation or an update, probably, progress report, I think, and then seek the board's input and then go forth. And if I would imagine public sessions would certainly be needed, whether this committee does that work or it takes, someone else does. I don't know.
But it is a town committee, so the meetings are open to
They are.
public, they're publicized,
They
minutes, everything, so.
Yes.
And sorry, I didn't hear the whole list, and the list that I have in the packet is not.
Go up a little bit.
Check right after the summary motion.
I think it's page
I must have an
47.
Okay.
I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, sorry. Yep.
Is sustainability part of that list?
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Okay.
Mhm.
That was my only question.
Okay.
Great.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing, hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All in favor? It's unanimous, 5 being present.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is request for appointments and reappointments. Christy, would you like to introduce this one?
Yep, so these are the initial appointments for Hank Roush and Kate Storm to the Affordable Housing Trust were for 1 year each. According to the trust charter, the reappointments are for 2 years. This was in order to create those staggered terms. So Chair Edinburgh has requested to be reappointed, the Select Board's representative to the trust for 1 year, and so those are those appointments. R. Gibbs Mitchell has requested reappointment as a Register of Voters, which is a 3-year appointment that goes from April to April. And then when the board amended the composition of Sustainable Westborough, we solicited letters of interest. And so we have 3 applicants who will serve 1-year terms, Peter Dunbeck, Cheryl Thomas, and Chris Egan. And then we would just want to note that Chris Egan is not a resident of Westborough, but is a business owner in town, which is something that we had discussed when we talked about the composition. And so the board is able to appoint someone who's not a resident per our bylaw if you feel that they're bringing something to the committee.
Okay, any questions or discussion?
I think it's great.
No.
Okay, I will entertain the motions. I don't know if
Sure.
we're comfortable, we can do it all as one
I'll make the
motion.
make the motions.
Do it all as one, and
Yeah,
unless
just
we
do it all. We can do it as one vote.
Maybe like we do with it, if someone wants to call out one of them, then we can vote it separately. How's that?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Good idea. Okay. I move to reappoint Hank Roush and Kate Storm as trustees to the Affordable Housing Trust for a term to expire June 30th, 2023. I move to reappoint Alan Edinburgh as the Select Board's representative to the Affordable Housing Trust for a term to expire June 30th, 2022. Move to reappoint R. Gibbs Mitchell as Registrar of Voters for a term to expire April 30th, 2024. Move to appoint Pete Dunbeck, Chris Egan, and Cheryl Thomas to Sustainable Westborough for a term to expire June 30th, 2022.
I'll second that.
Any objections, discussion? Seeing, hearing none, we move to vote. All in favor? It's unanimous, 5 being present. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is a discussion vote to amend personnel policies, section 5.3, vacation. All right, hand the floor over to Town Manager Christy Williams.
Thanks. As some of you are aware, in the recent hiring of an exempt employee, so typically at the department head level positions, the preferred candidate has requested an additional week of vacation time be added to the vacation benefit offered by the town. This means that the employee who would typically start with 2 weeks of vacation per the policy would actually receive 3 weeks of vacation at higher date. It's not an unreasonable request, and it's something that we have experienced when we're hiring highly qualified candidates from other employers who have a certain level of years of experience, and so come to us with more than 2 weeks of vacation. The board has also accommodated the request in recent examples. In the past, the understanding that when we hire the experienced individuals, they're like I just said, coming from having that higher benefit. So rather than having to bring these to the board each time, and in order to move through the hiring and negotiation process more efficiently and allow us to be more competitive in a very difficult labor market, I'm just requesting that the board make the proposed amendment to the policy, allowing the town manager to determine if agreeing to an additional week of vacation is appropriate. We had planned to bring this to you as part of the overall personnel policy discussion. And it certainly isn't my preference to bring it to you in pieces, but I think given the 2 department head level positions that we have vacant at this time, it would be beneficial to the town to have this amendment in place for those negotiations.
Okay, any questions?
No questions, but I think it would be helpful if, through you, Alan, if you could read the amendment to the policy.
Okay, so the amendment is: the town manager is authorized to grant vacation benefits at a schedule different than the contained in paragraphs A through D above, when the town manager makes a determination that the recruitment efforts of the town for qualified employees may be compromised due to the inability of the town to grant vacation benefit comparable to a potential employee's existing vacation benefit. When reaching such a decision, the town manager may grant up to 1 additional week of vacation upon hire. Employees granted additional vacation time at hire shall be awarded incremental increases on the same schedule as other employees until such employee has reached the maximum of 5 times the weekly authorized hours. The authorization shall apply only to exempt employees as defined by the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Thank you.
I'll move to approve the amendments to the personnel policy as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion or comment? Patrick?
Yeah, I guess completely understand what the intent here is. I guess I'm a little bit concerned that this is somewhat limiting. And what I mean by that is if we have a highly qualified individual who's got, let's just say, 20 years of experience that we're looking at, and they are coming from a company or outside of the town, and they've got 5 years of vacation time.
5 weeks, I hope.
Excuse me, 5 weeks.
We probably shouldn't hire that.
5 weeks.
That would work there.
I know.
5 weeks, thank you.
Earl's, how do I get 5 years of vacation time?
5 weeks of vacation time to start. This doesn't sound like it gives you the ability to negotiate that in because it's only 1 additional week above and beyond what the normal new hire of 2 weeks would be. And I also would question, and this probably is a bigger pot to boil here, around the difference between exempt and not exempt in this case, because coming from the private sector, we would hire based on your experience level, right? We would generally say, hey, you've got 10 years of experience, therefore you qualify for our 10 years of experience worth of vacation time. So I just throw those ideas out there to drive some conversation here.
Certainly additional flexibility would be welcome. Related to exempt versus non-exempt, certainly you could make it just any employee, understanding that it could not apply to union employees because they would have to, it would have to be consistent with their collective bargaining agreement.
I guess
thoughts on?
Well, Christy, I would ask in your experience, not only as town manager, but as assistant town manager where you were overseeing all HR aspects, how often did it come up that someone was coming in asking for more than 3 weeks to start?
More than 3 weeks? I can't think of a circumstance.
I don't
Yeah.
disagree, Patrick, with what you're saying. I mean, I understand that, but I also think that I'm comfortable with this change here, and let's see how that goes. And if we need to be more competitive, then but I think the town offers pretty rich benefits otherwise, plus all the holidays. So
yeah,
I'm comfortable with this.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, allow more flexibility. So if it hurt town manager's discretion, 3 weeks is appropriate, then 3 weeks is appropriate. If in order to lure that candidate in that we really like and they are coming with, and they had previously 5 weeks of vacation, and that's a showstopper for town manager to negotiate, that I don't want to lose that candidate as a result of that. So I don't think there's any harm in saying, hey, can we write this in a way that allows that flexibility?
We still have this basically allows you to go 1 extra week. If, as you said, showstopper or deal, I never know if it's showstopper or deal breaker. Showstopper's good, right? Deal breaker.
We could still come back to the board.
You could still come back to the board and we could grant the 5 weeks. And that's what I think what Shelby was saying too. We've been consistent that when we needed to, it's come back to us. We've granted extra weeks because it makes sense. We get someone coming in. I think if it was more than that, there's other things to consider. Yeah. But we could still make that call. And I would say let's let that come back to the board, but give the town manager, at least for now.
Yeah.
I think your question was great for Christy. When have we not gotten somebody with that extra week? I don't know that we've had that now, but we still have the flexibility to do it. Let's keep that with us for now, and if we see it change, we can always amend.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Good question. Sounds like we've reached consensus, so I'll call the vote.
Do we have a motion?
Yes, I think I made the motion.
Yes.
Oh,
Ian made the motion and you seconded.
Okay, sorry.
I think I did. I don't know.
You did. Today's been a long week.
I'm thinking about my 5 years of vacation.
I know.
Okay. That said, all in favor? It passes 5-0, unanimous, 5 being present.
Thank you.
Oh God.
I'm gonna get a job with the town.
Next on the agenda is a discussion vote to execute documents for Westborough's participation in the Public Health Excellent Shared Services Grant.
So as the board's aware, we've been awarded the Public Health Shared Services Grant for a regional collaboration with the towns of Northborough, Southborough, and Boylston. The towns have been working with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, CMRPC, to develop the intermunicipal agreement other documents related to the grant and to develop the RFP for nursing services. So included in your packet was a memo from CMRPC outlining the work that will be established through the grant. The Board of Health and the department staff have been leading Westborough's participation in this. So Ray Gothier as our interim public health director, Maria has also been involved, as well as Dr. Ehrlich as the chair of the Board of Health. So they've specified the benefits to Westborough. I just wanted to put out there that the grant cannot be used for any services or staff currently budgeted for. So I know that that's been a question that I've received. It can only be used to expand services. So at this time, we're only asking that the board vote to execute the commitment letter. However, the draft IMA, which I've sent to you previously, will need to be approved and signed at your next meeting, July 20th. So the Board of Health is meeting at the same time, though they just signed the form and I have it here. If you vote to authorize the chair to sign it. And I'm just going to go to the memo so I can say specifically what we're going to get. So we do currently have a very part-time contracted nurse that follows certain health cases in town, but this would be some expanded nursing services that would grant funding for 1.5 FTE nurses. And so some of the things that we've talked about through the master plan process is some community health. They'd help with infectious disease surveillance, preventative care, immunizations, and education and outreach and emergency planning activities. They'll also hold office hours in each community, develop health education programs, and organize immunization and blood pressure clinics. So they can work with the schools. They can also work with the nurse that we have currently at the senior center. And then we'll also be provided some backup inspectional services. And then finally, this grant would pay for some software related to inspections. And so that would roll out to all the towns. So that's it.
Okay.
I just have a quick question. Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to ask if there were any questions.
It doesn't specify, I'm just curious if, as part of this grant, the nurses have to be RNs or can they be LPNs? Do you know offhand, Christy? I didn't see it.
I did. It's not in here. I did see the RFP. I believe they have to be RNs, but I would check into that.
Okay, yeah, I'm just curious what
Sure.
certification they would need. Thanks.
I'll move to approve the letter of commitment for the Public Health Excellence Shared Services Grant and further to authorize the chair to sign the document.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further questions or discussions? Seeing, hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All in favor? It's unanimous with 5 being present. Thank you very much. Okay, next up is a discussion and vote to renew the animal control animal inspector intermunicipal agreement. Christy.
So in 2018, we started an intermunicipal agreement with the towns of Grafton and Shrewsbury related to animal control and animal inspector services. It creates a mutual aid relationship with the town of Shrewsbury, so there's no money exchange. We just back each other up specifically for vacations or other needs. But we do cover Grafton for these services, and Grafton is charged a fee for that. As Westborough's needs have increased in this area, we've intended to review how the IMA is working and how we might want to improve the service. Chief Laurie and I have talked to the town managers in Shrewsbury and Grafton, and now that we've come out of the state of emergency, we really want to make this a priority. And so the request at this time is that the board renew the agreement for a period of 6 months, and then during that time, we'll review the mechanics of the agreement and how that's going to work going forward, and then we would come back to you with a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or concerns? Yeah.
Just a question. I'm assuming that the towns of Grafton and Shrewsbury agree with extending it just
Yep.
for the 6 months.
Yes.
I can make a motion.
Make a motion.
I move to renew the IMA for animal control or animal inspector services with the towns of Shrewsbury and Grafton for a period of 6 months or through December 31st, 2021.
Second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further question or discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to the vote, I guess, or proceed with the vote. All in favor? It's unanimous, vote of 5-0, 5 being present. Excellent. Okay, next on the agenda is discussion vote of interdepartmental transfers.
Yep. So I'll just give a brief presentation if you have questions. The DPW director and Chief Purcell are here. So the first is an interdepartmental transfer for the Department of Public Works, moving money from salary to expenses in order to purchase flashing crosswalk signs. And I would just add that the Active Transportation and Safety Committee voted to approve the request to install a flashing crosswalk sign at Jasper and West Main, which I know the board has received some concern from the public related to that crosswalk, so that would be one of the signs. And then the second, well, actually, I'll let you, do you want to take up one at a time, or do you want to go through both?
We can go through both.
Okay. And the second is for the fire department, again, moving money from salary and wages to expenses. This transfer would be for the purpose of remediating the Class B foam that has PFAS in it from the foam trailer and 2 fire trucks. So these will also need to be approved by the Advisory Finance Committee at their meeting on the 24th. And so the request for DPW, the amount is $16,734. And for the fire department, it is $18,580.
These make total sense.
They do. I'll ask if there are any questions.
Yeah, Chris, I have a couple questions through you or to Chris regarding the crosswalks. And I apologize, I wasn't able to get these out to you guys beforehand. I'm curious if we have any crosswalk signals in inventory, or are these all new purchases? So I'll just fire them off and you guys can. So do we have any in inventory? How many are we purchasing, which would tell me the cost per sign? And do we have an intention? Obviously, Chrissy just told us about one of them, but do we have intentions for where the purchased items will be placed?
We do not have any available to be used. The purchase of, so we know one, and it was our recommendation that we buy some additional because we know there's going to be more installations. We don't have any specific locations identified. There are a number of locations where you could put them. We're using a process where, we work with public safety, the ATSC, and our own insights to, make sure we're prioritizing where we want to put the asset. So we know one location, which is Jasper. The other 2 are not designated for any location, but we just think it's smart to buy them now and have them available for use, because we think we're going to use them.
And we're buying 3 in total?
Yes,
okay,
3
great.
total.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Are we able to ask questions about the PFAS
Sure.
topic as well? Okay. For Chief,
Go ahead.
So thank you, Chief. Yeah,
You're
just
welcome.
a couple questions for you on the PFAS removal. I think it was mentioned 2 trucks and a trailer. How will that impact the department in regards to those? I'm imagining those are going to be taken off-site or somewhere to be remediated. Maybe talk through the process and how
Sure.
that'll work.
So the process does not involve removing the 2 trucks or the trailer from town. We have a disposal company that comes here. They'll pump off the 520 gallons of foam. They have a procedure where they have to rinse each tank 3 times, capture the runoff, also in 55-gallon drums. It's sealed and shipped up to Canada, where it's incinerated. As far as getting the product back in service, we've already investigated the replacement foam, a green foam that doesn't have PFAS in it. It's pretty standard across the country what's going on right now, and seems to be the product most people are going with, called Universal Gold. And as far as the funding to procure the new foam, prior to my becoming the fire chief, previous chief and fire prevention mitigated with Kayaku, formerly known as Microchem on Flanders Road. That when our foam was required replacement, that they would fund that purchase. Deputy chief and I met with them this week, and they were very good to work with, and they remembered the mitigation, and we were right on schedule for expiration anyways, and they knew we'd be coming eventually, and they said that once we purchased that new foam, that they would just pay the bill.
Thank you. You
That's
answered.
also about another $15,000 to $18,000.
Great.
That's awesome.
Thank you. You answered a couple of my other questions, so thank you.
Okay, any additional questions? Discussion? Yes.
Sorry, I just want to add one comment. Just to be clear, so this is an unfunded requirement, these crosswalk lights. It's not that I know nobody said this, but we manage our budget very well, I think, and this is not something we're budgeted for. So it's something we'll probably consider down the road, whether DPW or the Transportation Safety Committee or somebody has funding available to do these things. But the reason why we're asking for this transfer is because there's a requirement and it's well known we need to do it, but we're not funded out of our normal operating budget to buy these items. So I think it's important to make that clear that this is an unfunded requirement. So thank you.
Yeah, so I would just add to Chris's comment that when the previous signs were purchased, it came to the town meeting as an article through BPAC, and that's where they were funded through. And then that article obviously has been fully used up, and so we're using this method at this time.
So just as a follow-on question, so we're purchasing 3, and we have a location for 1. Has the Active Transportation Safety Committee brought forth other recommendations, and we just haven't decided? Because I feel like it's a pretty common request that I hear. We need so I'm just curious if there are some that we're anticipating in the queue that is, like, are we purchasing enough is where I'm going with the question.
I will end up buying more.
Yeah.
And so it's really up to how much we want to spend. Definitely going to be buying more. And we have, we've talked about the Complete Streets process. We have this big list. On that list, there's multiple crosswalks identified that require or recommend these lights. Okay. The ATSC, I believe, it's kind of chipping away at that. And I think 3 is probably sufficient for now, but I imagine we'll be coming back for more money.
Yep. But the intention is that this will become part of the normal, either for DPW or Active Transportation Safety Committee, will become part of a standard budget process, which is you'll have a plan of how many you expect in the next year. It'll go into the operating budget. It'll be a normal replacement of old signs as they age and wear out. It'll just become normal operating rather than a special case.
Right, and so I think when that article was introduced at town meeting, it was the first time that the town had considered purchasing them, and then once they went up, people really liked them, and so we started to get the requests. But I think, Chris's point is that that this is, something that people are asking for and need to be maintained, and so it will be a budget item, and whether it's the ATSC's budget or DPW, you'll see that in the FY23 budget.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'll move to approve the interdepartmental transfers as presented.
A second.
Seeing no further comments or discussion, we'll go to a vote. All in favor? Votes unanimous, 5-0, 5 being present. Okay, next up is a discussion vote on the virtual meeting policy. Christy.
Yes, so I think the last time we met, we were told that the state of emergency would end at 12:01 a.m. on June 15th, and there would be no more virtual meetings, but we knew that there was likely legislation that would be adopted to extend that date. And so on June 15th, there was a vote to pass legislation that did many things. One of them actually was also to extend the outdoor seating to April 1st of 2022. It extended the to-go alcohol and all sorts of other things that the governor had put in place as a response to COVID that municipalities have found to have worked really well for them or are not prepared to move on from them at this time. And so one of them was the extension of the virtual meeting. The virtual meeting policy, or the relief under the open meeting law, has been extended to April 1st of 2022. And so I sent you all the advisory that we received from KP Law that gives that update. Specifically, it continues to allow individual public bodies to independently decide to continue holding entirely virtual meetings. Public bodies may, but are not required to continue to hold entirely virtual meetings until April 1st, 2022, or such later time as a legislator may deem it appropriate to amend the OML permanently for such purposes. And so I think this is something that we've talked about, is that we expected them to extend it and to give themselves time to look at, to discuss what that might look like permanently. But right now it's just an extension of what we've previously been doing. This advisory has offered us additional guidance for that paragraph at the end of our agendas. And we sent this out to all of our boards and committees today, just advising them about the extension, but then also to take a look at what that alternative access means, because that's really important to make sure that the public is able to access the meeting. And so this is on your agenda because you also, when this came out on March 13th, 2020, we created a policy. And so in front of you, I gave you an updated policy, which really doesn't change how these meetings are conducted, but it just changes the verbiage in the beginning, really, that discusses why we have this policy. So previously we talked about the limitations of the 25-person gathering order. We talked about the March 13th emergency order, and so now we're referencing, I think it's Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and the extension. We're also referencing the April 1st date in the policy in front of you. And so if we were to amend this, we'll also send this out to all of the boards and committees, understanding that if they choose to meet virtually, that they would meet under this policy.
So question, so this will change slightly the paragraph that's included on agendas for remote meetings?
The policy doesn't speak to what the agenda needs to say, but in your packet, that advisory from KP recommends what that paragraph should say under 3 different scenarios. So an entirely virtual public meeting where the public will not be allowed, a hybrid public meeting, and then also a meeting with a public hearing.
Okay. And if it's remote, the expectation is that that paragraph off the agenda would still be read into the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Those are my 2 questions.
So number 2, Christie, in the policy, I guess, and this is referenced as well. So maybe I missed it when we approved this policy in its first version because it's not redlined in what's before us tonight. I guess I don't understand what it's saying. The public will not be allowed in even when there are any members physically present. Public comment. I'm not sure why that would still be relevant today.
Right,
Yeah,
I
that's a
have the
good
same
point.
question.
Yeah, that's a good point. So,
Okay. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think you could actually remove that.
I would go further, I think, if I may, Alan. I think number 3 also may not necessarily be needed.
That's a requirement of the relief.
Okay.
You mean the alternative access?
Right. I mean, if we're allowing them in person by striking 2.
Right, but if you're having a remote meeting.
Okay.
This
Yeah,
applies.
total hybrid. I get you.
This applies as if you're doing a fully remote meeting.
I get you. Yeah, you have to allow it both in person and remote if you do it hybrid. Yep.
Right.
Got it. Yep.
And if it's a fully remote meeting, then paragraph 2 is still relevant because you still might suspend public comment.
Right, but are we talking about hybrid?
We're talking about all virtual meetings.
To that end, does the policy need to?
I guess for 2, I would say may be temporarily suspended instead of will be.
So there were 3
Well, not every,
options.
right, to your point, not every meeting even has that.
Comment, right.
Right, sometimes it's just the board is meeting in The public is always welcome to attend, whether it's in person or
And then
virtual.
you would say the public may not
Right.
be allowed.
And then that would accommodate full remote as well as hybrid meetings.
I'm sorry, Alan, can you repeat what your
So-
change is?
So 2 would be the public may not be allowed into a board committee meeting even if there are any members of the public body and or Westborough staff or officials physically present at the meeting location during the meeting. Public comment portions of the meeting may be temporarily suspended.
I disagree. I thought you were saying the may is just in the last sentence. The public is always allowed.
Yeah, I think if you go to a hybrid meeting, you're saying
if
you
you're-
can,
but
you
if-
can attend in person or you can watch remotely.
Right, that's hybrid, but this is covering hybrid and full remote.
You could have
So
you could have a committee that's meeting that doesn't allow the public. I mean, the school committee did that.
Why would we do that?
If you
I mean,
didn't-
those are all public meetings, so.
right, but
You provide
under
the alternate
under the
access.
relief, you only need to allow that access.
Oh, so, I'm
via-
sorry. Okay, so we're providing remote access to that
Yes,
meeting, not
yes.
in person.
Right.
Right.
So we're saying that it's
Okay.
acceptable for some meetings to
Right.
be hybrid and other meetings to be fully remote. Is that what we're saying?
Correct.
And others to just be in person.
And yes, you can still do in-person meetings and follow those rules. If you're doing a fully remote meeting, you can follow those rules.
So if you have an in-person meeting, you don't have to offer remote access.
Right, if you're
Right.
fully in person.
If you're fully in person, so, okay. But I guess I would say for number 2, just to be crystal clear, that the public will not be allowed, may not be allowed, I don't know, into a board meeting. I mean, I interpreted it as like any meeting.
But So this policy is specific to virtual meeting and remote participation.
Okay.
So it doesn't apply to in-person
Okay,
meetings.
sorry, you're right.
So.
But-
Okay.
But that still doesn't, the public may not be allowed into a meeting.
So when we first went
What am I
remote,
missing?
so when we first went remote to facilitate with Westborough TV at that point in time, I physically was here in this room
Mhm.
with Westborough TV in the control center. But the meeting was fully remote.
Hmm.
So technically, 2 applies to that situation, that just because I was physically here in the room would not grant the public access to attend the meeting in this room.
I'm sorry to be really technical, but into a board or committee meeting is what I'm stuck on. Into a room, into a virtual room, that's what I'm stuck on.
Okay.
The public will not be allowed into a board or committee meeting, even when there are other members physically present. So
So you
into
wanna
the
say
room,
Into the board or committee meeting room.
that's what we're saying,
Okay, sorry, I misinterpreted what you were saying.
yeah. Although I still think
I-
it's
I
very
just-
odd.
I think that whole number 2 is just very odd, considering, again, going back to that we're in a virtual meeting, where this policy is about, we're trying to accommodate a hybrid model in a virtual policy. Therefore, we should have no restriction on any public attending this meeting. They should be able to attend it here in person
Right.
and remotely hybrid, just like.
Well, not if the board can decide it's gonna go completely virtual. So we could go back to just doing a Zoom meeting and not being.
I think your
in person at
choice
all.
is you either go completely virtual, you go hybrid, or you go, 100%
Correct.
Right.
in person. And this is specific to the hybrid, and in the
No.
hybrid.
No, it's any virtual meeting.
This is
So it's
any virtual
hybrid.
meeting, fully virtual or hybrid.
But
That's why
number
it's
2
vague.
confuses it because it speaks to in-person, which is the
hybrid.
which is the hybrid, but,
And the public comment speaks to both, hybrid and fully remote.
so maybe number 2 could say the public may not be allowed in, but why
If
if
we
we
need to
were
split the
meeting in
policy in
person,
half.
if we're in person, why wouldn't someone be able to come into a physical room, any board or committee meeting? If they're using town property and they're in a meeting room, whether it's a big room or a small room, why wouldn't members of the public be allowed into that room?
Well, because this doesn't say specifically,
So this came up constantly during COVID because of the gathering limits. So
Yeah.
you could have met in person and not allowed the public so that you wouldn't
Fully understand.
potentially run afoul of a gathering limit.
So- But also, the meeting room is anywhere, if it's hybrid, right? Or even if it's fully remote, the meeting room is anywhere where members of the board or committee are present.
I don't disagree
And
with
so
you.
that's why I think if it's just the public may not be allowed into a board or committee meeting room.
Is this policy purely virtual meeting, or is it hybrid as well? Because if it's the two, I think we need to split this apart. We need to clarify what is allowed at a virtual and only, and what is allowed at a hybrid meeting.
I think it covers both, but I think
It's just
I think you remove that first sentence altogether.
Okay.
I don't think you need it.
Yeah, I mean, because we don't have any,
Basically,
we
if you're
don't have any
hybrid, someone
gathering.
can come here,
Right,
because we don't have the gathering limits.
Right.
If it's completely virtual, we don't have a meeting location.
and then
It
they
doesn't
can,
matter anyway, so they're gonna be
right,
virtual.
and then
Right.
the alternative access comes into play in number 3.
Correct.
And Ian, you're saying remove the first sentence. Why would you keep the public comment portions? Meetings will be temporarily suspended.
Say maybe temporarily suspended.
It may be. In other words, because there are boards and committees that don't have public comment periods.
But
And
that
they're-
you're not required to.
And you're not required to.
I
And
would
So
just-
you wouldn't, you could just
But
strike
it
the
could
whole-
also be
You could just
for-
strike the whole thing.
you could, but if you have a board or committee that has a public comment period and decides because they're doing a meeting remote for one session,
that they're
for
just
some
not-
reason that they
right.
don't want to do at that meeting, they should be allowed that flexibility.
I
Having
agree.
public comment with a remote
Can
meeting
be
adds a level of
temporarily
privacy.
suspended as opposed to will be temporarily.
May.
Say
May.
Just
temporarily.
maybe.
Just put may in there.
Yeah, may, okay.
So it may. So
Yeah.
it's not
So I
that,
think we just change that, eliminate the first sentence. would be
I'm
my-
sorry, if public comment isn't required, why do we have to have a policy on it? They can just decide, right?
I think, Alan, you're saying like if there's precedent, like we typically have a public comment period, so this allows
But we
the
don't
board to
have
say.
to.
You're right. You're right.
Okay.
It could be removed.
Okay,
No, it could be
new
removed.
rule, no, not so many policies in a meeting.
I think we should have a policy about a subcommittee for
Christie, what do you think?
policies.
Remove all of number 2?
I think you can just remove the whole thing.
Okay.
Let's remove the whole
I
thing.
think we're on concurrence there. Okay, so we need to
Yeah.
amend the motion. We need the motion.
I will, I don't know what I'll do. I move that we amend the virtual meeting policy as proposed, inclusive of removing item 2.
And I'll second that.
And my only comment is let's just make sure we renumber them. I know that seems obvious, but.
We'll renumber. Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing, hearing none, we'll go with the vote. All in favor? Unanimous, 5-0, 5 being present. Thank you, Christie.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you, Christie.
Okay, next on the agenda is request to approve meeting minutes.
You're gonna have a tough time with your times here, though.
I know.
8:05, back to 8 to 8:05.
We have to go back in time, so we have to just move faster than the speed of light as we go through the
Sheila
minutes.
has been a machine on the minutes.
Okay, so thank you, Sheila, for getting all these prepared. What I will do is, is our preferred method now. I'll list the dates. If people have questions or comments, we'll set those aside and approve those separately after we discuss them. Other than that, we'll go forward and approve the rest in one motion. So it's May 11th, 2021, May 15th, 2021, May 25th.
Question?
Okay, so we'll set that one aside. May 28th and June 8th. Okay, so the first motion is to approve the meetings for the Select Board for May 11th, May 15th, May 28th, and June 8th, 2021 as presented.
So moved.
Second? Oh, Sean's got it.
Go ahead.
Okay, moved and seconded. As we already know there are no comments, we'll go to the vote. All in favor? 5-0, 5 being present. On to the minutes from May 25th. Patrick, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just had a procedural question. Does the Board of Health also need to approve those minutes? They do. Okay, that was my only very simple question.
Okay, so we'll entertain, you can make the motion to approve it then.
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for May 25th, 2021.
Second.
Approved in second. Excellent. And a vote, all in favor? 5-0, unanimous, 5 being present. Thank you very much. Now we move on to issues and correspondence. Oh, wait.
Can I have issues and correspondence? I missed something in my town manager report.
Oh, at the discretion of the chair.
At the discretion of the chair.
Oh, boy.
Yes, you may.
I just wanted to mention that on June 24th, we will be no longer using the COVID information line or the COVID email address. We set that up at the beginning of the pandemic. We have not received any activity on both of those things. We did it consistent with the closing of the vaccine clinic because those were really the most recent questions that we did get that was related to COVID was about the vaccination clinic.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so issues and correspondence. Start with Sean.
Start down here. Thank you very much. Yes, so I just wanted to speak briefly to the Youth Commission is looking for an additional adult member. It's a 9-person board, 4 members of the high school as well as 5 adults, and one of those, their term is ending, Yolanda Hernandez, and so they're seeking candidates. If you have any interest, it's for a 3-year term. Please reach out to Kara Presley, and she can tell you all about the committee. And then second, the Senior Disabled Taxation Aid Committee. We also need an individual for this committee. So it's been around for a couple of years. I don't think it has ever quite gotten to the full 5 members. It's made of the town assessor, the treasurer, and then 3 residents of the town. I recently joined the committee, and we have another long-standing member, but we could use a 5th member. So just want to throw that out there as well, and please feel free to reach out to myself or the town assessor with any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Shelby.
Sure. A couple quick updates. The Community Preservation Act Exploratory Committee has hosted 1 of 2 meetings that are informational sessions for boards and committee members. So I fully anticipate we'll have public sessions as this board has requested. But I'll just remind board and committee members that the next meeting is June 30th at 7 p.m. in the Great Hall. Also wanted to update the board on the efforts to have a presentation on the mosquito spraying. So I reached out to the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and I was informed that the Mosquito Task Force study will be finalizing and submitting its report on August 15th. So I consulted with Christy, and we agreed we should see that report. They also anticipate hopefully providing some supplemental information to municipalities to help interpret the report. So whether we're ready for a meeting on August 24th or we have to push it off, we'll have to see how long the report is, I guess. So to be determined. And also, as I have not had a chance, I had to reschedule a meeting with the chair of the Active Transportation Safety Committee, but I will have an update for the board at our next meeting.
Okay, great. I'm just going to keep going down the line. We received correspondence from Worcester Music, a nonprofit organization that brings concerts and fosters music education, headquartered in Worcester. They do a regional young artist competition every year. They were able to hold it this year, and they let us know that this is for middle school and high school students. In the senior instrumental, it covers both vocal and instrumental musicians. In the senior instrumental division, second prize went to Plamen Fung, who's a Westborough, Mass resident, happens to attend an online high school. So congratulations to that individual. And in the junior instrumental division, which is for middle school students, April Zhang, or Zhang, I apologize if I mispronounced the name, a student at the Gibbons Middle School, took an honorable mention. And so congratulations to them. A brief update from the Affordable Housing Trust. The COVID-19 Emergency Rental Assistance Program, 6 households began receiving assistance as of July 1st. An additional 5 households began receiving an emergency rental assistance beginning August 1st. The households span unit sizes from a studio up to a 3-bedroom, slightly more than half are 2-bedroom units, and the average household size is 4 persons, with the smallest being 1 and the largest being 6 individuals. And there's not a correlation between household size and the number of bedrooms. And finally, the Westborough Housing Authority. Earlier today, the Westborough Housing Authority held their annual public hearing to present their quality assessment results, their budget, and their 5-year capital plans. And I just want the board to be aware that I have helped facilitate a connection between the Housing Authority and Senator Eldridge's office to explore funding opportunities that might exist to install sprinklers at 2 Rogers Road and fully sprinkle that building, as well as to install either a heavy lift or an elevator to help the residents get up and down from the 1st to 2nd floor. And they believe they're at the point where they can't do the elevator or the lift until after the sprinklers go in because of the capital expenditure rules as far as bringing buildings up, municipal buildings up to code. And so that is proceeding. That is all. Ian.
Yeah, I just had 2 things. One is I just wanted to publicly thank the DPW. They've been doing a ton of work this spring, really, of clearing what I'd call town roads of overhanging trees and brush and whatever, and I've noticed it in a number of neighborhoods, including the one I live in, but other places in town. It's just really been great because it's really opened up sight lines and places where roads were getting shrunk, and having a newly licensed son, it's nice that the roads are more normal too. So, but I just kudos, and Chris, if you could pass that along to your department, I think it's great work and much appreciated. I've heard a lot of comments from residents just about the work being done, and appreciate that. Second, there was some correspondence that was passed to me from Member Marshall around some questions on the golf club, and we addressed one of them tonight. Was a question around the alcohol service, and I think folks watching earlier know that we're in the process of hopefully moving that forward to resume that service to folks that are at the golf club. The other 2 comments, one was related to the non-allowance, I guess, of golf carts into the parking lot, and some frustration with that. I just wanted to comment that golf carts have never been, as far as I can remember, allowed in the parking lot, and if they were going in there, they were doing that. So nothing has changed there. It's something that we've never done, but golf club personnel, if someone needs help, have always volunteered to grab help with getting clubs from cars to carts, or from carts back to cars, and that would continue. But so nothing has changed there, although it was commented that was a change. And the final piece was just a comment on the quality of the clubhouse, and just again, as a reminder to the public that this is a transition year. We talked about it earlier. As we transition it into being run by an employee of the town, it was consciously decided by the Country Club Operating Committee, which has now been merged into the Recreation Department, to let us move into just running the course, figuring things out before determination was made about things like apparel and other things that were sold previously in the golf club facility. So there are things that are being looked at. Apologies if folks don't like the look of that, but that is, discussions continue to be held. That it's a plan that's in place. The positive comments on the condition of the golf course continue to come in. That's the most important thing there, and we are working on the amenities. The rec department is is doing that, and just ask folks to be patient as we move through this, but enjoy the golf course, as it sounds like folks are doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Patrick?
Okay, just a couple of things. I believe, if my math is correct, we still have a seat available on Sustainable Westborough. So I would encourage the public to please get involved. That's a great opportunity. It's a one-year term, so it's a great opportunity to get involved with a very meaningful project for the town. Update from the Senior Center and the Council on Aging. I attended my first meeting last week, and it was well attended by many members of the senior community. There's a couple of events coming up. There's a Medicare virtual event on June 23rd. If you're interested in doing that, sign up at at the following URL, shiphelp.org. There's a grab-and-go lunch on the 23rd, and it's tuna salad. The congregant lunch on June 30th is grilled chicken, and Wednesday's knitting and crocheting group gets together at 10 a.m., so I encourage folks to get involved with that. And then on Friday, June 25th, the Asian Outreach and is at the Senior Center at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. There will be exercise, a slideshow, and refreshments. I also attended the last planning board meeting. There were 2 hearing continuances, one on 4400 Computer Drive. They're continuing. They're waiting for a sound study to come back for the town to understand what the impact is of the sound issues up at 4400 Computer Drive. And then 1400 West Park Drive, they are working on a mitigation for the Flanders and West Main intersection as traffic may require. That's it.
Thank you. Anything else for issues and correspondence? No. Okay. Then next on the agenda is an executive session.
Sure. I move to enter into an executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, and under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate.
As chair, I declare that an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the board's negotiating and bargaining position. The board will not be reconvening an open session. I ask for a second for the motion.
Second?
And we do a roll call vote. Patrick?
Welch, yes.
Ian?
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
Keough, yes.
Passes 5-0, 5 being present. Thank you very much. And thank you, Westborough TV, for coverage and for facilitating the remote participation. It was wonderful. Thank you.